Welcome to this week's episode of the Good Luck Club podcast. Our mission at the Purposeful Project is to help 1 million people start a business of their own, and we're well on our way. We do it by sharing knowledge from people like my guest today, Tom Mercer, founder of MOMA Foods. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on today, Simon.
Absolute pleasure. Tom, could you start off by telling our guests a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, okay, so my name's Tom. I'm a farmer's son from Staffordshire. Both my brothers are back home farming. I came down to London 20 years ago, worked as a management consultant, left that and set up my business, which is MOMA. So I'm the founder of MOMA. We're a breakfast food company and an oats company, and we specialise in porridge and now oat milk as well. So yeah, that's what we do, porridge and oat milk in a nutshell.
I was just reading you sold £10 million worth of porridge in the last year alone. People seem to like porridge.
Yeah, there's a lot of porridges consumed. The porridge is a great market. It's a real staple in the UK. It's particularly good in the UK compared to kind of other countries. It's a real UK favourite. We specialise really in the convenience formats of porridge, so more on-the-go products. And coronavirus has not been our friend actually this year. So yeah, it's been a tough year from that point of view, but the porridge market generally in the UK is really buoyant.
So how did you get into all this? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so my journey, like I said, farmer's son, came down to London, worked as a management consultant, really wanted to do my own business. And I thought there was a gap in the breakfast market, a gap for a healthy, filling breakfast that you can have in the morning. At the time, there were croissants and muffins in coffee shops, but not much else. And I used to walk over Waterloo Bridge every day to work, and I'd have a smoothie with oats in that I'd make at home, and I'd pour it into an old water bottle and walk over Waterloo Bridge. So I thought there was something in this, a healthy filling breakfast for people. So I did my desktop research on it, kind of a few Mintel reports. I sent a survey out to friends on SurveyMonkey to ask them what their breakfast eating habits were and what was important to them, and something that was filling, healthy, and tasty with the important things, and convenient as well. So that's kind of what I set out to do, create a healthy, filling, on-the-go breakfast.
Now, a lot of people talk about starting their own business, and let's face it, looking back at your career, you could have earned a lot of money working at companies like Bain. You worked there for a few years. I'm sure you could have just continued to earn a huge amount. How did you make that leap from that well-secured, comfortable, perhaps job and career path into this crazy world of starting something for yourself?
Yeah, I know it's a funny decision, and you look back and wonder if it's the right thing sometimes. And for me, it was. I think it comes down to personal choice and your ambitions in life and your appetite to be an entrepreneur, which is, I think, largely linked to your kind of appetite for risk. For me, it was always something that I wanted to do. I'm from quite a farming background, but quite an entrepreneurial farming background. And it always seemed something that I was going to do. Going into consultancy was always an introduction to the working world for me. I met some really inspiring people. I learned quite a bit of stuff, but it was never what I was going to do long term. I always wanted to set my own business up. So it didn't seem a big risk to me, actually, just because that was my kind of what I expected to do before I went into it. But it was, it was quite a big step.
Yeah, again, I think that people can get trapped in the trappings of a job. So it's for a lot of people, a lot of my listeners, I know they want to start a business of their own. With things like COVID, it's even harder. Of course, people don't want to give up their stable income. Was it simply you had this idea and you just made a decision, or were you searching for an idea to frankly quit what you were doing?
So no, I enjoyed my job. Bain was a great company. They treated me really well. They actually gave me some time off to look into this idea. But I approached it from the point of view that it wasn't like a eureka moment and like, I need to provide porridge or oat milk or breakfast smoothies on the market. It was me actively deciding I wanted to set up my own business, not because I didn't like my job, but because that's what I wanted to do. And then thinking about what I could apply myself to. And food and drinks it's very much in the public eye. It's very tangible. It's really touchy-feely, kind of sexy industry from that point of view. So it's a very easy thing to get into, and it's a very attractive thing to get into. It's quite hard because of that, because there's a lot of competition. So yeah, it was very much driven from the point of view of I want to do my own thing. What can I think of to do?
You weren't daunted by the food industry it's such a competitive space, isn't it?
I think I was probably more naive than daunted. So I was very green. I left my old job at 26, set the business up at 27. And no, I wasn't daunted. And I think there's a beauty and a curse of kind of doing things when you're a bit younger. I think the negative side is you're not as experienced, and therefore it might take it longer to make it work. The good side is you don't have as many commitments. There's not as much opportunity cost of, you probably haven't got a mortgage, you haven't got a family, that sort of thing at that stage. And also that kind of naivety can be really good sometimes. I'm sure a lot of the best inventions have been born out of people who are just ideas to see risks within an industry. So they'll go out there, they'll try something and they'll battle away and they'll make something really work that people wouldn't have done otherwise, because they've approached it with a slightly more naive but fresher point of view as well.
Fair. Yeah, I think that's a good insight for my listeners to pick up on. I think the whole idea that you need to have experience in an industry, it isn't true. I mean, Elon Musk, of course, has done space. He didn't know much about space. He just hires good people and learns on the job sort of thing. And it can bring a fresh perspective. It's a very good point, I think. And I want the listeners to pick up on it. So can we have a measure of you? I mean, how, for my audience to understand, how do you measure success for you personally and for your business?
Yeah, so for me personally, success is all about being fulfilled in life. And I split that quite clearly between kind of personal life and career. For personal life, for me, it's about family and having a loving family and kind of the opportunities and fun times and confidence as a family. And I'm really lucky on that front. From a business point of view, it's about having a successful and fulfilling career as well. And that's different for different people. For me, going into business, there's an element, obviously, that's financial. Businesses are largely measured on financial success. It's not everything, but it's certainly one element. And that money then affords opportunities in life. But it's about having a product that I'm really proud of, and a team that I'm really proud of. I suppose those are the two main things. If you've got a product out there that's genuinely doing some difference in the world, I don't want to over-egg it. We do porridge and oat milk. We're not saving lives, but people really enjoy them. It really makes a difference to lots of people's lives. And if you can do that, it's really fulfilling. And I think it gives me satisfaction that I'm doing a good thing. And then having a team as well, I'm really proud of, is really important to me. We employ, it's not a massive team. We have 12 people, but we probably employ another 20 people indirectly through the manufacturers we work with. And a lot of those people rely on MOMA for their livelihoods. So cultivating a great team is really important to me as well.
I can tell, Tom, you're a very humble person, but I think you could be saving lives. You're giving people a healthy start to their day, making sure they eat something good that isn't processed. I think you could literally be saving someone's life and them not realise it.
Well, it all makes a difference. Some people can have a more productive morning because they've got a good breakfast inside them. That's why I started it, because it genuinely does make a difference.
Yeah, you could.
So I suppose in some loose way, we're saving lives.
Yeah, I think I just do what
all contributes to a better life for people. Yeah,
do what Elon Musk does. He's saving humanity. He's not got a space company. You're feeding someone that might save their life, and then that person might be a doctor who goes to the hospital and saves someone else's life. You are saving lives.
We do have a lot of doctors eat MOMA actually on call
sure.
and everything. So we're playing our part.
Totally, absolutely, yeah. Well, I can see that your background. You went to Cambridge, which I love that city. I also spent some time there, but I wondered what your view on education was. A lot of people believe in university, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people believe that's good thing to do. What's your experience? What's your opinion?
I mean, I loved it. I was in terms of, I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I met some great people. It was, I was very fortunate in my education. For some careers, I think it's really important, having the more professional careers and so on, where you need those academic qualifications. For being an entrepreneur, I think not the opposite, but I think it's far less important actually. And a lot of the most successful entrepreneurs have not got kind of a conventionally well-qualified education. And I think the education system in Britain generally, and probably in the world, does miss a lot of stuff out. It's very academic focused. It trains people on certain things and the ability to learn and remember stuff probably doesn't give enough to creativity. And certainly a lot of the skills that people have aren't really recognized at school. It's purely about the academic side of things. So, I think kind of success at school doesn't translate to success in life. That depends a little bit on what sector you go into, but certainly from an entrepreneurial point of view, I'd say it helps, but it's you have to realize it has its place within it, and it's just part of the picture. There's a lot of skills that aren't taught at school or university that are extremely valuable for an entrepreneur, and more valuable, I'd say.
Well, my theory is that sometimes people go into university and things like risk get trained out of you. You kind of, back to your point about being naive can be good. Sometimes you learn too much about how the world works. You'll realize that you start a business, it's a chance it will fail, so you don't try, right?
Yeah, totally. And it's the more you know about stuff, the more you're aware of it, and the more kind of risk averse you get sometimes, which is a real shame. It's kind of, for me, kind of, so one of the key things about being an entrepreneur is having that appetite for risk. But the difference, I think, between a good entrepreneur and one that isn't so good is making sure that risk is calculated and thought through. And it's not just based on passion and blind faith. It's based on passion, but then also kind of some real discipline and kind of objectivity about what they're doing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm seeing the title of your book, by the way, Appetite for Risk, later when you tell the world how you built your amazing business. So I always wonder, on this subject of like going to university and how you get educated in, and all these sorts of, I guess, building blocks to become who you are today. But do you think entrepreneurs are born or bred?
I would obviously, I think it's a bit of both, but kind of to focus on the bread bit, I do think that makes a massive difference. I see people. I do think it's about the appetite for risk, but a lot of that is informed by how you've grown up. And like, if both of your parents, for example, are in very stable, steady jobs, they're doctors or lawyers or bankers or accountants or whatever, they may be more risk averse, which definitely impacts you growing up, and you'll be less risk averse. If your parents are in something more entrepreneurial, it just won't seem as much of a risk, and you'll have more of an appetite for risks. You'll see it as more exciting, but also it just won't seem as bad a thing. I think a culture that encourages risk and to be able to fail without kind of stigma attached to it is a really good thing, and ultimately benefits that person and benefits society at large. So I think it's a bit of both. It's about kind of being born with that slightly more, not cavalier, but kind of a bit more kind of bullish attitude to stuff, and a bit more glass half full and positivity towards things maybe. But I think a lot of it is bred, actually, in terms of the people around you and the interactions you've had, and that shapes your appetite for risk and whether you get scared by risk or you get excited by it.
You mentioned earlier your parents were farmers. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Do you think, I do see farmers as entrepreneurs, but I don't know if I see them as taking big risk as such. What was it like in your household? Was it discussed as entrepreneurial, what they were doing? How was it framed for you?
Yeah, it was. So I'm lucky. Kind of, my dad's kind of very progressive as far as farmers go. There's a huge variety in the types of farmers, and a lot of them are great. Some are stuck in their ways, and my dad's kind of quite progressive. Would always encourage us to kind of, do small projects on the side. As a family business, we went into and out of several different ventures. Fruit farming, for example, went into and out of. Converting old buildings into office blocks, into rental, putting solar panels into the farm, all sorts of different stuff that you can do off the back of having a farm. So it's always been very much kind of a can-do attitude, an attitude of give it a go. If it doesn't work, then hopefully you've done a calculated risk on it and you know the downside of it, and then you can move on to the next thing. So yeah, it definitely made a difference in terms of informing my approach to things.
My parents were both entrepreneurs, but they always had slightly different roles they played. One was more conservative than the other. Was it a similar dynamic in your family?
I'd say so. My dad is he's kind of a real detailed guy, actually. So, and I think there's no kind of magic formula for an entrepreneur. You kind of got vastly different people, like you say, kind of Bill Gates versus Elon Musk, for example. Very, very different characters. And my dad's kind of a really detailed guy. He kind of been successful through getting into the detail and everything, being all over the numbers. My brother, for example, is probably a little bit more big picture on stuff and perhaps willing to take a risk a little bit earlier on. Not an ill-informed risk, but kind of that threshold level of comfort is probably a little bit lower for him. Those, and I've got both my brothers actually, and they're both kind of approach it from different points of view. And it's about, I suppose, attitude to risk, like we said before, and kind of threshold level of comfort with things, and how much you get into the detail of something before you feel that actually you're ready to give it a go, and how much you trust your intuition and instincts. It's a blend of intuition, gut instinct, and then kind of objective, rational, detailed analysis, I think, and the blend of the two help kind of get to a point where you're like, okay, let's proceed with this.
Do you feel like you're more gut instinct, or do you go into the detail?
I'm probably slightly more detailed, I'd say, again, gone without wanting to labour the point, it's probably been my biggest learning over the 15 years that I've been doing MOMA is, to start with, I was all passion and hard work, and it's something that I've got a real ability to work hard and a lot of resilience. But that's not always a good thing. It can be a bit of a blessing and a curse. You need to have that objectivity to say, actually, when an idea isn't working and when to walk away and move on to the next thing. And MOMA's been a brilliant business, but we've had some really high points and some low points, and some stuff that's worked and stuff that hasn't worked. And we've pivoted several times. We had stalls in train stations selling breakfast to commuters. We moved away from that, and we started selling into offices and supermarkets and airlines, focusing on bircher muesli, which is our main product. So oats, yogurt, and fruit. So a great breakfast product. We then kind of pivoted away from that and focused on porridge, which has been the mainstay of the business over the last kind of 5-6 years. And then that is still there as the core of the business, but oat milk is now coming through as kind of another pivot, really, and another focus within the business. So my big learning has been actually kind of to be more objective with what I'm doing, and actually make sure whilst I have that passion, to try and view things through a clear lens and actually do that detail and stuff. So, it's, as I say, kind of about the balance of that passion versus objectivity.
Yeah, I mean, you're a good example of this other point, which I always like my audience to pick up on, that overnight successes take 15 years, right? The persistence piece and that permanent pivoting that you're doing in your business. I mean, COVID has brought pivoting to everyone's business, I think, but that whole concept that you are willing to perhaps let go of something and to try something new as a risk, it sounds like a permanent thing within your business.
It has been kind of often changing, and it's interesting what you say about the overnight successes. I mean, there are a few businesses that have been overnight successes, but in my industry, for example, kind of the food industry, you'll look at a business and go, oh, wow, they've just like rocketed over the last few years. But then you'll look at it and think, actually, there's 20 years of work behind that. In my line of work, Oatly is a good example. Oat milk brand, they're rocketing at the moment, but they've been going for 20 years. And it's the same with lots of other food businesses. It's often a lot of work's gone in behind it, and being able to kind of change direction and often think of like kind of sailing a boat or something. You've got the same destination, but you need to change course along the way. It's making sure you can, as long as the destination is right, you have to change course to make sure you get out there.
Totally. It's funny. I'm actually a big fan of Oatly, and I like their brand and I like their product. And I discovered Oatly about 3 years ago when I sold my company and moved to London. I thought maybe I'll invest in Oatly. I've just discovered oat milk. It's amazing. So I'm going to help them, I thought to myself. Then reached out and realized they've been, like you said, they've been going 17 years. And they just had a $200 million round, China resources out of Hong Kong, and just invested in them. But I thought they were new because I just discovered them. And so, to your point, it's not overnight. It's these things that you suddenly think have skyrocketed because you've noticed them, or they have gone mainstream. Had 17 years of going at it before that happened, right?
Yeah, no, they've got quite a chunky valuation on them at the moment. But yeah, if you wanted to invest in oat milk, Simon, then look no further.
We should have a chat. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I was looking on your website this morning, and I was literally hungry. Looking, I don't know how you've managed to design it, so it makes me hungry. But there's some real clever design there, because literally I was like, I want to eat all that right now. Good job.
Well, thanks. That's very kind of you. I'll let the guys know, they'll be chuffed. And we're actually looking at a bit of a redesign at the moment. So have a bit more of an e-commerce focus on the website, rather than, I think it's a change, same for a lot of people, rather than being kind of story and product first, kind of web shop second, we're kind of changing the focus. So it's kind of primarily going to be an e-commerce focused site, because that's obviously a really growing area for everybody. And it's a great channel for us to be able to not be wholly reliant on supermarkets.
Sure. In a previous life, I owned an agency called Fluid, which I sold to PwC. And one of the projects we worked on was Cadbury's, trying to, because people weren't going into the supermarket anymore and just picking up stuff in the same random way that they were. How can you create that same impulse buy on a shopping trolley? And it's completely different. Like you're saying, even the way you represent the product, it has to have a complete revamp. So that's a whole new exciting challenge ahead of you, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so we're working on that kind of over December, January, trying to roll that in next year, and just make the most of the transition to more online shopping, which is, it's just coronavirus has obviously massively accelerated that this year. A lot of people shopping online and will stay shopping online, even when kind of lockdown ends and so on. So it's a really roller coaster ride for the supermarkets at the moment, and those traditional bricks and mortar stores, and kind of how they manage that is going to be really interesting.
Well, I guess we are called the Good Luck Club podcast, so I always like to talk a little bit about luck and how it plays a role in business. And what's your view? Have you had a lucky moment? Can you identify whether luck is something that you think plays a key part in business, or whether you feel like it's just random and nothing we can do about it?
Yeah, definitely. I think kind of in a way you make your own luck. It comes through a lot of hard work, and if you do stuff, if you work hard enough and keep sticking at it, kind of your luck will crop up anyway. But yeah, there was one particular moment we had. It was on our third stall in London Bridge train station. So our original stalls were filing cabinets on wheels with branding on the outside. So it was really basic stuff, selling food to commuters, breakfast to commuters on their way to work. And we had a girl working on the stall at the time, and she was just selling breakfast to a customer. And the customer said, "Oh, I'm the buyer at Selfridges. Can we get stock your product in Selfridges?" And the girl on the stall says, "No, sorry, we don't sell wholesale. We only sell on our stalls." And the buyer kept pushing her, saying, could we do it? And then my business partner at the time was walking by and heard the person on the stall saying, no, we don't sell. And then managed to grab the Selfridges buyer and say, yes, we'd love to be in Selfridges. So that was our first kind of listing outside of the stalls in the train station. So that was at the beginning of our transition from being a direct-to-consumer model through our stalls in train stations to actually selling on shelves in a kind of a high-end supermarket, if you can call Selfridges that. So they got into Selfridges, and then that led on to Waitrose, and then on to Sainsbury's and Tesco, and at the same time getting into Virgin Atlantic and British Airways. So yeah, that was our first step outside of our stalls. So that was a fortuitous moment, I think.
It's a great story to illustrate, I think, for my audience too, just how, luck can play a role, because I think there's two types of luck. There's the random luck and then the luck you influence. And that story illustrates both. You had someone turn up that was interested, were a bit persistent, but luckily at the same time, someone made sure that luck didn't slip by making their own luck, by leaning in and saying, hey, hold on, actually we can do that. Let's talk. Because quite easily that luck could have walked in the door and walked out the door. And things would have been different. So great illustration of what I'm trying to, I guess, share with people, that luck is both random and controllable.
Yeah, I think the more effort you put in, and the more you're in over the detail and on top of things, the more you recognize these opportunities that may otherwise have passed you by, and you can kind of grab them, and call that luck or call it hard work. But as you say, it's kind of a meshing of the two, really.
Just stepping back to when you started the business, for my audience to understand, what were the kind of 5-6 steps that you took that were crucial? I mean, it sounds like you sat down and figured out understood the market a bit and the opportunity for for the products you were thinking about. But what was the process? Just give us some ideas so that people wanting to start businesses can get an idea of what they could do to first steps.
Yeah, no, definitely kind of really interesting because there's a bit more to it than I said before. So yeah, first of all, had the idea, did the desktop research, sent a survey out to people trying to kind of give a bit of verification to my theory that kind of there's an opportunity in the breakfast market. Then I did a trial in Waterloo in London. I went down to New Covent Garden Market, bought a load of fruit, bought a load of old water bottles from Tesco, emptied them out, put my own labels on the outside of the bottle, spent all night blending fruit in my living room in Waterloo, and made kind of 60 of these homemade oat smoothies. Then I went out onto the street in Waterloo and gave them to people on the way to work and took their business card in return. And then went back in after I'd given out all the smoothies or the oat smoothies, went into work, emailed another survey out to those people, and then got their results. Did you like the breakfast that you got this morning on your way to work? And most people did. I had a couple of replies. Some people saying they didn't trust the dodgy bloke under the bridge in Waterloo giving them breakfast. They didn't have it. Somebody else said it was so filling it made them sick, which was, I was going for filling, but I didn't want to make people sick. But anyway, I took all the positives and I left my job. And then I spent 3 months really going around the streets and train stations in London with a clicker, counting the number of people walking by. So I wanted to find a location that was busy enough in the morning, that had enough footfall that I could create a business, but equally was enough space that you weren't going to cause congestion. So, and when I found a place, I'd stand there in the morning with a clicker, counting the number of people walking by, and I thought I needed 10,000 people walking by. And if 2% of them stopped, that was 200 people, and they spent £2 each. That was £400 revenue in a morning on a stall. So that was the basic idea. And I spent, several months doing that in stations and on the street around London. I got kicked out of a couple of train stations by the police for loitering. Kind of, they thought it was a bit dodgy, sat there with a clicker. Anyway, then would put proposals into Network Rail, who run the big train stations, into the councils. I put proposals into Transport for London, who run the Underground. And then finally got the go-ahead from Southern Trains, who run Waterloo East train station. And I said to them, look, I'll put a stall in place. We'll sell breakfast to your commuters. It's a great service for them. You'll earn incremental revenue that you wouldn't have earned otherwise. Give it a go. And they did. And that was our first site, which we launched in February 2006. That was the kind of the startup journey. Then it's, we then found a premises to make it. We got a railway arch in Deptford. We started making all the products by hand in the morning. We used to start work at 2:15 in the morning, make the products, load them into the stalls, and then take the stalls to the train station and start selling breakfast to commuters. So, it was quite a hectic first 12 months, really, I think.
I absolutely love it, Tom. I love the insight. I want my audience again to pick up on so much to unpack there, but this kind of grit and detail that you're illustrating, you've gone through, is something I think people overlook. Even myself, for that matter. I mean, I opened up a cafe. I didn't once click how many people were going by. I just thought there's lots of people in the streets. It'll be fine. So, and I wish I'd done the clicker, but that takes energy and effort. And what a lot of the things you described there as well. A lot of people that want to start their own businesses, and I know a lot of people reach out to us saying they'd love to start a food product business. They get all caught up in, well, we've got to get the manufacturing done, we've got to get this done, we've got that. And your whole point of like, we did the fruit ourselves and got it all grounded up, and then I took some products, put labels on them, and made it, there and then. That kind of MVP for food, minimum viable product concept that you're making. I don't think MVP was even really recognized as a terminology back in 2005. So, you were kind of just doing it, getting it, and then checking with customers. And that standing in the street stuff, I just love it. And I know, audience listening might be thinking, well, we're in a COVID world now, you can't stand in the street and do those things. Probably before COVID, it would be weird. Like you said, someone standing in the street giving you food. It's always going to be weird. You just wear a mask now. But that follow-up piece as well is just genius, and that kind of direct customer feedback. I admire it, and I want my audience to be inspired by it. So well done, Tom.
No, thank you.
I think Well, I'm conscious of time. I could talk to you forever. I love your story. I guess just to wrap up a few final questions. If you've clearly innovated your business again and again, how do you make sure you keep that culture in your business? For my listeners out there that have businesses that are finding it hard to innovate right now, how have you managed to maintain that culture of innovation? And any words of wisdom around innovation?
Yeah, for me, innovation, it goes back to kind of what I've been saying. It's about that combination of the passion and dreaming. You got to dream about stuff and kind of think about, let your mind wander about kind of where the gaps are and where the opportunities are. And, if in an ideal world, what situation, what service or product would there be? Is it something totally new, or is it a new take on something that's already there? So that dreaming bit is really exciting, actually, I think. And it's then marrying that with the objective analysis that goes behind it. At the moment in MOMA, for example, if we're looking at a new area, we'll sit down, we'll have that brainstorm, that kind of dreaming phase about kind of what could we do, what would be really cool, and then we'll try and put it through a bit of a filter, really, in terms of how big is the market size, is the market growing, can we make what's the competition like on the market, can we actually produce this product at a price that's going to create a good enough product and give us a good enough gross margin to be able to afford all of the other stuff we need to do in terms of kind of paying salaries and marketing and all that sort of thing. So, does it fit within our brand? Have we got a brand that can pull this off and compete on the market? So we're really focused on anything within the oats space. So if we've got something within oats where it's a growing market, it's doing well, we think we compete, we think we can make a margin, we've got either the ability to manufacture ourselves, or we know people who can manufacture for us. So yeah, it's a combination of that kind of that dreaming and intuition and insights in the market, combined with that rational, objective, detailed analysis of whether that opportunity is going to translate to a successful business.
Yeah, makes total sense. It's definitely a difficult matchup, isn't it? You're kind of talking about like aspirational and with logic. Which is an interesting combo, trying to have that kind of, yes, we dream of doing this, but are we supported by enough people walking past our store kind of idea? It's an interesting way of looking at a business. It's very smart, I think, for people to try and back it up with some fact, but still have the dream. It's a good way of looking at innovation, I think. Do you, if you went back to your younger self and gave some advice, anything that jumps out?
Yeah, I suppose from the from the business point of view, it would be that point about objectivity and staying objective about things. From a personal point of view, it would be keep learning. I think it's something that I'm one of these people who sometimes, or certainly kind of in my 30s, didn't keep a particularly good balance. And, I got really, really absorbed in the business to the detriment of kind of most other things in my life, I'd say. And I think it's really important to try and keep that balance. And the best people on our team and generally are the people that kind of work really hard, but then leave work at work, enables them to keep a little bit more focused, I think. That's kind of, where I'd come from.
Yeah, the balance point is a really tricky one, isn't it? That kind of, it's always thrown around, isn't it? Work-life balance, which I think is definitely one of the things that entrepreneurs find hard to get right, especially driven entrepreneurs. It's not easy.
No, it's really hard. And as I said, there's no kind of magic formula for the right entrepreneur. There's different people that do it in different ways, and some people that throw everything into it, and some people that do manage to get that balance. I personally think if you can get that balance, it's a really good thing if you can. But yeah, it's not easy to do.
Permanent adjustment, really, based on where you're at in your life. Right? You've got 2 kids now. I mean, that's very different to when you started the business too. So that changes things, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would have, in the frame of mind I was when I started the business, it would have been really hard to kind of to have kids at that stage, and particularly in the early days, to have a proper relationship or anything like that as well. So and it was kind of really full on. And the more innovative and risky and new your idea, probably the more work in a way it's going to be sometimes, because the more unknowns you've got to grapple with.
Yep. I had to marry my business partner for it to work for me. So I know what you mean. I mean, just
that's one way around it.
Yeah, one way around it. Just touching on that, you're a sole founder. I mean, this also feels like a hard route for my listeners listening. What's your experience with being a sole founder? Do you have regrets on that, or do you think it was the right thing for you? What's your view?
So it's, I would say to people, if you have a business partner, there's benefits because you can share the load a little bit and you can both bring different skills to it. It's important that if you have a business partner, I think that you do bring different skills rather than just skills that overlap each other. I would say to people, be careful about that choice of a business partner, because I think there's a lot of stories of business partnerships that don't work out, and you obviously don't hear those stories because they don't work out. So I just caution to people actually about kind of automatically assuming you need a business partner when you go into business. If you feel you can do it on your own and you would rather than get a business partner, just employ somebody to do a lot of take a lot of the stuff off your plate that you can kind of farm out to somebody else, then I would just encourage people to critically look at that rather than assuming that they need to go into business with somebody else. It's not to say they shouldn't do at all. There's a lot of very successful business partnerships, and that synergy between two people can really work wonders. But it can also not be best.
How have you coped with it? How have you managed to? I mean, I always think being an entrepreneur is quite lonely. If you can't go home necessarily and moan to your family, they don't want the stress put on them, and you don't want them to worry. You can't moan to your team. How do you manage that part?
Yeah, I suppose my wife's great actually. My wife Hetty, so I'll kind of often chat to her about lots of stuff in the business, and I think it's really important to have people you can chat to, whether that's your partner. Without wanting to burden them too much, but she's really familiar with what's happening in the business, and her point of view is really, really good as well. And just kind of, it's really helpful to have that outside perspective on something, whether it's team issues or strategy issues within the business. It's really good just to kind of get that third party perspective, and it's also good if you can to kind of get kind of peers in the working environment, so other entrepreneurs or other people doing in the working world that you can meet with confidentially. And I've done that a little bit. I'm not doing it at the moment, so I need to restart it. We had a team of 6 of us who would meet once a month or once every 2 months and have a totally confidential conversation where kind of no holds barred, you can say whatever you want, and it's a really refreshing way to get stuff off your chest and get honest advice from people, because everybody struggles with stuff. Everybody's got issues going on, whether it's about the marketplace, more often than not about different people on the team and kind of personnel issues, and getting people's help on that sort of stuff is really, really useful. And you'll find that your input can really help other people as well.
Great advice, and totally true. I always tell people the most important deal you'll ever do is the partner you select in life. That person, you can respect them, they can give you an opinion you value, and if you can have someone you can trust to talk to in your life, it's amazing. And I love the network point. It's very much core of what we're doing here at the Purposeful Project. We have an entrepreneur network helping other entrepreneurs so that no one feels alone. I think it's very, very important. So it's great to hear that you've got that, and I think it's very important for people out there listening to realize that they should absolutely put their hand up and get help, because we're all going through these problems, or we have all been through them at some point. Anyone that's built a business will have problems, and often these problems are not unique, although you might think they are for you. They're not. You can get help and advice from people that have been through it. So thanks for highlighting that, Tom. Yeah. Well, I'm going to sum up some of the points I've taken from you today, and for my audience to quickly, sometimes people skip to the end so they can listen to some of the things I think they should go back and go into in detail. I love this naive is good we kind of talked about earlier. I do think that's such an important element to starting a business. Sometimes don't overanalyze it. But equally, however, I do love this point you've also brought up, which is kind of dream, but marry it with objective analysis. That's also a great way of looking at it. And if you're not good at the objective analysis, maybe that's when you should get a founder in or partner in to help you do that. But if you're good at the dreaming part, which a lot of people are, good at one or the other, then it's very interesting to think about the two in hand, because I think it does make a huge difference. I think about my own failures in business. If I'd been a little bit more objective analyst and a little less dreamy, they may have worked. I'm sure Elon Musk wouldn't agree. It's all about the dream, but I do think that getting to in balance is really important. I like this keep learning point, which is very true, very important. I think anyone out there, entrepreneurs-wise, right now, that's working hard, don't forget to keep learning, because there's lots of new things. Like I'm learning about YouTube right now. I mean, there's just so many new things out there, and just to keep that keep learning mantra going that Tom's brought up today, I think is really, really important. I think the be objective and passionate element is also very important. This work-life balance is a never-ending struggle. If you're feeling the difficulty of work-life balance, then don't worry. So am I. So is Tom. It's just normal. I think it's bring different skills to the table when it comes to partnerships. That's such an important piece of advice from Tom there. Want people to note it. I think you can start a business on your own, but of course, having a co-founder can be really, really useful. It's not the only way to go, but if you do have a co-founder, I agree completely with Tom's point that you've got to make sure they have different skills to you. So you don't manage each other for a start, but also so that you can, of course, bring more value to the business that you're both involved in. So I will close by just saying how much admiration I have this concept of that stand in the street and sell. Stop making excuses for not starting your business. Now, already, as soon as I say it, you're like, well, it's COVID, I can't stand in the street. There's still people in the street. Wear a mask. Stand in the street, and then just as important, follow up. And 15 years from now, you could be Tom. Tom, thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Thanks very much, Simon.
Appreciate it. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Good Luck Club podcast. If you're feeling hungry, go to Tom's website below and buy some of his products. Let us know what you think. You can do me another favor if you don't fancy buying anything. Just go through to Tom's company's social media pages and all the links below. Give him a like, give him a thumbs up, give him whatever the social media platform you're on tells you to give, and let him know that you enjoyed the podcast today. It would mean the world to me. We know you have thousands of podcasts, well, actually 781,000 podcasts you could be listening to right now, but you've decided to tune in to ours, and we are incredibly grateful.